It was nearly dusk when the phone rang, slicing through the quiet rhythm of my evening. I was folding towels in the laundry room, the soft hum of the dryer masking the first few rings. When I saw Caleb's name light up the screen, I smiled, despite everything I still did. "Hey, sweetheart," I answered, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear. "Hey, Mom," he said, a little distracted. "Just checking in. Melina and I are heading out for dinner, some bistro her cousin recommended. Paris is expensive, but she's happy." I asked about the weather, whether the hotel was nice, if he'd seen the Seine yet. He gave short, polite answers. I didn't mind. I was used to being the one who asked. After a few minutes, he said, "Anyway, we'll talk more soon, okay? Love you." "Love you too," I replied, then waited for the line to go dead. But it didn't. There was a pause. Then the sound of Caleb shifting the phone, maybe into his coat pocket. Melina's voice came next, low and close. "Who was that, Mom?" he muttered. "Something about the house again. Probably that leak in the guest bathroom." I held my breath, my hand still on the edge of the dryer. Melina laughed. "Well, it is technically hers." "For now," Caleb said, his voice sharp. "She's a burden. We'll talk her into signing the deed eventually. Guilt works every time." The blood drained from my face. I couldn't move, couldn't hang up. I stood there surrounded by clean laundry and warm light, suddenly cold. They were planning something, and the house, my house, was just the start. Grief, when it first arrives, moves like water, quiet, invasive, unstoppable. I was 42 when it drowned the life I knew. Paul died in an accident no one saw coming, leaving behind a tired wife, a teenage son, and just enough insurance to keep our lives from falling completely apart. I remember the day I signed the final paperwork for the payout. The man across the desk kept calling it a benefit, as if money could ever replace the steady patience of Paul's hands or the way he always made our son laugh even on bad days. I didn't touch a cent of it for a year. Then slowly, I began to reshape our lives around the hollow space he left behind. The house came first. A modest, white-painted craftsman at the edge of Asheville with old bones and a good soul. I chose it because Paul would have loved the porch and the oak tree in the yard. I made it ours with careful hands, painted walls, weekend landscaping, secondhand furniture. I fixed up myself. It was the only thing I had ever owned that felt entirely mine. It was supposed to be the foundation for Caleb to feel safe again. I didn't date. I worked. I gave. 2 jobs most years, sometimes 3 in the summers when Caleb needed camp or books or braces. I told myself that was enough. That mothering well was its own kind of love story. When he got into Columbia, I cried in the parking lot of the diner I waitressed at. The scholarship wasn't full, but we figured it out. I sold my grandmother's ring, dipped into the insurance, picked up an overnight shift. I told him not to worry about anything except studying. He promised he wouldn't forget what I did for him. After graduation, he and Melina moved back to North Carolina for a few months. There'd been a layoff. Rent was high. It was only temporary, they said. I didn't hesitate. I gave them the upstairs and repainted the guest room myself. Melina said she liked the pale gray. I said nothing when she replaced the curtains, or when Caleb rerouted the mail to their names. Even when they started referring to the place as the house, never Mom's house, I let it slide. Maybe I wanted to believe we'd become a family again under one roof. Maybe I was tired of eating dinner alone. I never thought the hands I raised would turn and reach for what I'd bled to keep standing. Now, hearing those words, "She's a burden," I couldn't stop the memories from rolling in, one after another, each more bitter than the last. The mortgage I carried alone, the years I spent without holidays because I was covering shifts, The back pain I ignored, the small joys I shelved. And yet, it wasn't the betrayal that stunned me the most. It was how unsurprised a part of me felt. I folded the last towel, slowly pressed it flat, and set it on the pile. Then I walked to my room and pulled out the fireproof box from under my bed, the one that held the deed. It didn't happen all at once. If it had, I might have stopped it. But erosion is quiet. It wears you down grain by grain until one day you look around and realize the shoreline is gone. They started calling it our house about 3 months after they moved in. At first I thought it was just careless phrasing. We should do something about the porch, Melina would say, or we've been thinking about a new stove. When Caleb chimed in with, I'll take care of the bills from now on, easier if it's all automated, I told myself it was kindness. Help. A grown son trying to share the load. I didn't ask why the electric bill was suddenly going to his email, or why the gas company started calling me Mrs. Hargrave Jr. instead of Lena. I just smiled. I told myself not to make a fuss. Melina painted the hallway one weekend while I was at church. It needed freshening up, she said cheerfully. The soft blue I'd chosen years ago was gone, replaced with a sterile shade of cream that matched their furniture. I stood there blinking, trying not to let it show on my face. She hugged me from behind and said, We're building something beautiful here. I nodded and let her believe I agreed. Then came the conversation about the nursery. Melina sat across from me at the kitchen table, one hand curled around a mug she never washed, the other resting on her belly. We've been thinking, she said, smiling. If this works out, we'd love to turn your room into the nursery. You'd still have the guest room, of course. It's cozier. Caleb didn't look up from his phone when she said it, as if it were already decided. That night, I lay awake in the very room they wanted to repurpose, listening to the wind rattle the old windows Paul had once sealed shut with his bare hands. I realized how small I'd become in my own home. Every wall whispered someone else's name now. I reached over, turned on the lamp, and opened the drawer beside my bed. Inside was the letter Caleb wrote me from college, the one that ended with, I'll always take care of you, Mom. I folded it back neatly and set it next to the deed. I told myself not to listen again. I'd already heard enough. The words were burned into my memory, sharp as broken glass. She's a burden. But something inside me, some small wounded part still waiting for this all to be a misunderstanding, pressed play again. The recording crackled softly. Caleb's voice faint at first. She'll give in if we remind her how much she owes us. Melina's laugh followed. Just mention the college loans and the fact that she hasn't paid rent since we moved in. I paused the playback, my thumb hovering over the screen. I hadn't paid rent in my own home. I hit play again. She's emotionally dependent. We don't have to be cruel about it, Caleb said. We just need to make her feel like we're her only real family. She is easy to guilt, Melina agreed. And once we're on the deed, we can finally start renovating properly. There was a brief rustling, the sound of silverware glasses clinking. Then Melina again, more casually this time. We'll take the master bedroom when we get back. It makes no sense for her to have the largest room when she barely does anything anymore. That one hit harder than the rest. I paused. The recording closed my eyes, and for a moment let the silence fill the room. They had been sitting in some Paris cafe, dining on food I paid for, planning how to edge me out of the life I'd built for all of us. I pressed play once more. She doesn't even realize how close we are to just taking over everything Caleb said. And if she pushes back, we remind her about retirement homes, about healthcare, The woman's not getting younger. Possession is 9/10 of the law, Melina said lightly. We've been living there for years. If we had to fight it, I'm sure some judge would sympathize. They laughed. It was the sound I used to love, the one I'd strained to hear from the kitchen as a young mother just trying to make dinner and keep him smiling. Now it made my stomach turn. I hit record on my phone and saved everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with every light off my hands, wrapped around a cold mug of tea I'd forgotten to drink. Every corner of the house seemed to echo back. Something I'd given a birthday party in the living room, Paul's handprints in the back garden, the late nights folding laundry, so Caleb could have clean clothes for school. I had given everything. And still, it wasn't enough to be safe from their plans. By morning, something inside me had settled. Not peace, not yet, but a quiet certainty. I would not plead for space in my own home. I would not let them decide what I was worth. I opened the drawer again, took out the deed, and began making calls. Joanna didn't ask why I showed up unannounced at her office that morning. She just waved me in, shut the door, and poured coffee into the chipped mug she always kept on the corner of her desk. "You look like someone who's come to set something straight," she said. I slid the deed across the desk. "Can you confirm I still hold sole ownership?" She picked it up, scanned it with her usual efficiency, then nodded. "There's no cosigners, no liens, no additions. The house is entirely in your name, Lena." That was all I needed to hear. I told her what I'd overheard. Not every word, just enough. Her face didn't change much, but her eyes hardened. Joanna had known Caleb since he was in diapers. She'd danced at my wedding, held my hand at Paul's funeral, and now she said nothing as she reached for her legal pad and started writing. Over the next hour, we mapped it out, the legal protections, the timeline, the contingencies. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I signed what needed signing, made copies, and thanked her on my way out. By the end of that day, I had a private meeting scheduled with a realtor 2 towns over. Marcus had worked with me once before on an estate case, discreet, professional, no nonsense. When I told him I needed a quiet sale and a fast turnaround, he didn't flinch. "We'll price it to move. I know a few buyers who'd jump at it." I packed only what I had brought into the house: photos, linens, a worn leather chair. Paul had loved the books I'd collected over 3 decades. Everything else I cataloged. What was Caleb's went into boxes marked clearly and loaded into a moving truck I arranged myself. I prepaid for a storage unit and left the code with Joanna in case they came looking. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I found a furnished rental in Charlottesville, a place with light floors and neutral walls that held no memories. On my last night in the house, I stood in the kitchen alone and placed a note on the counter right where Caleb and Melina would see it when they walked in. Surprise. A burden did this. I set down the keys beside it, locked the door from the inside, and exited through the garage one final time. As I drove down the familiar streets, the town blurred behind me like a painting washed in rain, and ahead of me, the road began to open. They came back on a Wednesday. I knew the day not because they told me, but because the calls began just after noon and didn't stop for hours. First Caleb, then Melina, then Caleb again. Missed call, voicemail, text, another call, each one more frantic than the last. Mom, his voice crackled through the first voicemail. "The key's not working. Did you change the locks? What's going on?" The second was shorter, harsher. "Lena, this isn't funny. Where is everything? Where are you?" I listened to none of it in real time. I let them pile up while I sat in the small kitchen of my new rental, stirring sugar into a cup of coffee I didn't really want. I stared out the window at nothing in particular, letting the silence answer for me. By early evening, their panic had shifted tone. Melina's voice filled one message syrupy sweet but sharp underneath. "We're just really worried, okay? Please call us. Just let us know you're safe." Safe? I smiled at that. For the first time in years, I was. Later that night, Caleb left a final message, his voice strained. "We found the note. I don't know what you think you heard, but you've made a huge mistake. This is our home too, and you had no right, none, to sell it. We're talking to a lawyer. You've really done it this time. I saved that one too." I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I didn't offer comfort or defense. Let them yell into the void. Let them wonder where the line between control and love finally snapped. I had no interest in pulling them across it. The house was gone. The door no longer opened for them, and my silence at last was speaking louder than anything I ever said. They demanded a meeting. Caleb's message had been short and sharp. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., cafe on Main. If you don't show, we're coming to your office. So I showed. I arrived at 10:05 not out of rudeness, but intention. Caleb and Melina were already seated, postured in practiced indignation, hands curled around untouched mugs. I didn't greet them. I simply sat, set my phone on the table screen up and pressed play. Their voices spilled out familiar and cruel. I watched their faces shift as each word echoed back at them. She's a burden. We'll take the master bedroom. Guilt works every time. Melina paled. Caleb's mouth tensed, then tightened into something between anger and denial. You misunderstood, he said flatly. No, I answered. I finally understood. Melina leaned forward, her voice soft and cutting. You blindsided us. You sold our home out from under us. It was never yours, I said calmly. It was mine. Paid for. Maintained. Protected. Caleb scoffed. After everything we've done for you, I met his eyes and didn't look away. Yes, and you taught me exactly what not to become. They didn't know what to do with that. I didn't give them time to recover. There will be no money, no access to my accounts, no forwarding address, no second chances. Melina opened her mouth, closed it again. Caleb's fists clenched on the table, knuckles white. I'm your son, he said finally, like the title alone should mean something. And I was your mother, I said quietly, not your asset. For a long moment, we sat in the silence neither of them had ever learned to live inside. I stood, slid a small envelope across the table with the storage unit details, and turned to leave. Behind me, neither of them called my name. The quiet in my new apartment felt different. It wasn't the aching kind I used to fill with other people's needs. It was soft, whole. I wasn't waiting for someone to knock or call or ask for something they'd already decided I owed them. I made tea in the mornings. Real tea, not the half-cold cups I used to forget on the counter. I sat by the window, watched the birds on the ledge read entire chapters without interruption. Some days I didn't speak to anyone, and I liked it that way. But I didn't disappear. After a few weeks, I found a small community center nearby that hosted weekly grief and boundary setting groups. It felt strange at first, sitting in a circle of strangers and saying my name aloud like I was starting over. But that's exactly what I was doing. I wasn't there to talk about Caleb, not directly. I was there to talk about the quiet ways we lose ourselves when we're too busy caring for everyone else. I met women who'd been through worse and others who were just learning how to say no for the first time. We didn't fix each other. We listened. That was enough. One evening after the group, A woman named Sabraya pulled me aside. She ran a shelter for single mothers on the edge of town. "We could use someone like you," she said. Not to preach, just to sit with them, tell the truth. So I started showing up. Once a week at first, then more. I sat on worn couches with young mothers who had no one left to believe in them. I listened to their stories. I told them some of mine. Not the bitter parts, just the parts that reminded them they weren't alone. I didn't tell them what to do. I let them decide that for themselves. And one afternoon, walking home with the chill of early fall in the air, I realized I hadn't thought about Caleb in days. Not with pain, not with anger. Just distance. Not every loss is a wound. Some are the first step towards something that finally feels like your own. A year passed in the quietest way. No dramatic changes, no declarations. Just steady days, honest, unspectacular mine. The date snuck up on me. I only realized it was the anniversary when I saw the first yellow leaf fall outside my window. Autumn had always been Paul's favorite season. Caleb's too, when he was little. I used to rake leaves into piles just so he could jump into them laughing. I made myself tea and sat at the kitchen table with my journal. No one expected anything from me that day. No calls, no demands. I opened to a blank page and wrote a letter. Not to Caleb, not to anyone else. Just to me. You were never a burden. You were the foundation. You were the one who kept it all from falling apart. You carried what no one saw and gave more than anyone ever gave back. And when they tried to reduce you to your usefulness, you chose to walk away. That wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. I signed it. No flourish, no apology. Later, I took a walk. I didn't mean to go near the old neighborhood, but my feet found their way without asking. When I reached the street, I slowed not to look back, but to pass through. The house stood there, familiar but distant. Someone had painted the door. The porch was clean. It didn't hurt the way I thought it might. I didn't linger. I didn't hope for anyone to look out the window. I just kept walking. I didn't lose my son. That truth settled in slowly, without bitterness. I lost the version of him I wanted to believe in, the boy who would never turn away from me, the man who would remember the hands that built his world. What I let go of wasn't a child. It was the illusion that he saw me. And what I found in the space left behind was myself.